Werner, welcome, man. How are you?
Hi, Carlos. I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Fun week for crypto.
Oh yeah, it's been very interesting.
I'm really. I mean, like, I posted a tweet earlier about how I'm trying to determine if people are waking up earlier from their tweets, given that they're poor now. But like, I haven't reached any conclusions yet. But yeah, it's an interesting time to see. You always see like new influencers pop up, and then the market goes down, and then some of them disappear.
Yeah, it is a very quick-moving space. I mean, even with the protocols and like DeFi projects, they come and go. The influences come and go. The flavor of the month comes and goes. Yeah, it's really like the moment you're not keeping up to date and you want to share a little bit of gossip, you realize it's totally out of date.
It is. I mean, yeah, that's the word, the gossip. Yeah. Well, want to give people a quick overview of what the US is for people that haven't heard of it, or for those that didn't watch the previous episode. Although, if you haven't, you should definitely go back to it because it's a really good one.
Yeah, thanks. I thought it was a really good conversation. So Youves is a synthetic asset platform on the Tezos blockchain. It allows you to mint tracker tokens by locking up collateral, either Tez, the native token on the Tezos blockchain, but also a few other selected collateral types. Then the main asset that we have is US dollar stable token or tracker token, the UUS
Mm.
dollars. We also have a tracker token on the Bitcoin, and there's one that we also have on index of DeFi products, like DeFi tokens.
Mm.
Funnily enough, Luna is also in there.
Ah.
Uh, but this has never really taken off so much, so we need to consider what we're going to do with it. Uh, we're probably going to release a Euro tracker token as well the coming weeks. And we see like once we see enough demand, we'll also do a gold tracker token.
So yeah, we were talking about it, like, of course, before starting recording, and it's always. I mean, I work very closely with a project that also has a stable coin, um, albeit that stable coin is based on lending. So it's like a DAI kind of thing,
Mhm.
and a lot of people have asked us, and you were telling me that they have also been asking you if you're gonna run into the same problems as UST has. And of course, it's very different mechanisms for keeping the peg, and it's very different way of doing things. So yeah, would you like to explain to these people why
Sure.
you're
But
facing a
maybe
different thing?
before I go into this, I would also like what you just mentioned about the stable token based on lending. I
Hmm.
think there's an important point to make there in that when you have a stable token that has like on-chain collateral like this and it's over collateralized with something else, can be Bitcoin, can be ETH or TES in our case, you really like you can create like you lock the collateral, you mint the token, and once you sell the token, really you have borrowed now against your collateral.
No.
And the person who's buying the stable token from you, they have lent you the money, and it's it's collateralized. It's kind of there's this pledge from you that there's something there in case you don't come back. And you can either do this on a one-to-one relationship or even like n to one, one to n, m to n. But then you have to do the matching. So if I want to borrow 1,000, I have to find somebody who wants to lend 1,000. So
Right.
then you have the matching problem, and also the terms become a bit more crucial. If you don't do that, if you just allow people to mint a stable token and people to buy that stable token, you avoid the matching problem. But on the other hand, you have the liquidity problem. You shift basically the whole matching problem goes from here to there. You
Right.
don't fully avoid it. It's now just a different problem. And we think that eventually we'll probably go for a hybrid approach in that as long as you do smaller sizes, you can just always do this on the exchange on some kind of DEX. But if we have people who really want to do much bigger tickets, that we will allow for some kind of matching block trade mechanism so that if you want to do significantly more and you find somebody who wants to do the other side, that you not both have to go via the exchange and incur very significant slippage.
Okay. Okay, that's an interesting approach. And yeah, going back to what we were
Yeah.
saying about like how people ask you about if you're going to undergo the same problems as Terra.
So yeah, I think first, yeah, no, I don't think we're going to have the same problems as the UST and the whole Terra ecosystem, because I think it's fundamentally a different approach to going about this. Something like Bitcoin or Tez or like on the Tezos chain or ETH, they just have different properties. I mean, let's maybe think Bitcoin as the most obvious example. Bitcoin makes very few promises in what it does. It's just there and people can use it. People see a value and they trade it, they store it. And if Bitcoin loses half its value overnight, people are going to be disappointed. But it doesn't break any promises with that.
Uh-huh.
Same for ETH, same for TES. And Bitcoin itself, or again TES or ETH, they have they have their idiosyncratic use cases that are kind of not really dependent on a specific project. So you can really see Bitcoin as something that has some kind of independent value, whatever that value may be, and because people value it at a certain way. If I, as a DeFi project, start using Bitcoin as collateral, Bitcoin has maybe become a little bit more useful, but there was use already before. And if I stop accepting it as collateral, it maybe becomes ever so slightly less useful, but it's not dependent on my DeFi project for its overall usefulness.
Right.
So I can sort of see myself like building on another platform. I'm now on the Tezos blockchain. I use Tez as collateral, and the Tez has been before us, and it had its use, and now we use it as well, and we accept it as collateral, and there's a certain value of where people trade this, and we value it as such. And if the value decreases, we will ask our the minters to maybe burn some of their tokens or put in more collateral, but the value is kind of independent of our project. This
Hmm.
becomes very different in the situation of something like Luna and Terra, where the Luna token was kind of created at the same time as the Terra,
Right,
as
they're very
the
intertwined.
UST. So you can no longer say that the Luna was something that was there before, it has an independent value, and I can build upon that. The two are really, it's like a self-referential loop in the end. And that can be very beneficial on the way up, but the problem is it works the same way on the way down. So not only did it not have its own obvious independent value, it also had basically infinite supply. Because like the moment this death spiral started happening, the protocol started creating more and more Lunas
Yes.
and started selling them in the market, which was already not really absorbing the existing Lunas. And then, yeah, you get this positive feedback loop that can really run into the ground. So, in my view, this death spiral was a question of when and not if.
You know what I found really interesting? Everyone was quoting Do Kwon's messages, right? Do Kwon's tweets of, hey, have fun staying poor. Hey, we're going to destroy die, whatever, whatever. But actually, I went back to look at the tweets, and the original tweet that he replies to, it's like by a lady economist. I'm blanking out on her name. But she was saying, this mechanism will work way on the way up, but like on the way down, it's not gonna be able to take the stampede of people that are going to be trying to save some of their money. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm surprised more people are not mentioning this, because she was absolutely right. She knew it. I mean, she pointed out from the very start.
Was it Lynn Alden? She did a lot. She mentioned
I
this
think,
previously.
let me see who was that. Because I'm also part of the problem, but not saying her name. I wonder if it would be the same if it was a dude, by the way. But that's a separate discussion.
I mean, funnily enough, after this, I mean, when the whole collapse happened, I actually started looking a bit like deeper into this because I also want to see a bit what had happened there, what had people been saying previously. And I remember like Do Kwon, he had been doing an interview on Real Vision, like the this finance blog platform thing, finance video. And in this interview, I think it's a year or two old, they mention the death spiral. They say, yeah, in theory, it's something that could happen if certain prerequisites are met, but really, it's not going to happen. And then it's a bit like, yeah, this could be, but yeah, nothing to see here. Move on. And I thought it was interesting that they clearly saw it was there, but they said because of the user adoption and the utility, it really wasn't going to happen. And I think it's difficult once you start just dismissing uh, crucial points like this just with a sleight of hand. It's just not, yeah, it's not good practice. And
Yes.
please, you want to say?
No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, I also see that when I look at uh, the reactions on Twitter, there's so many people who thought at the time that yeah, like the crypto boys are gonna take out the suits, like we're gonna there's gonna be this reversal and Luna will go back, and who knows, maybe there will be some kind of reversal, but I think ultimately it's a flawed concept, and I think this is actually a big problem in the crypto world, in that people are so hooked on the new thing that there's not an awful lot of thought put into whether the new thing actually makes sense. Everyone just
Mm,
wants to have the hype. Everyone wants the things, to be crazy hype going up. Everything is fantastic. And I thought a lot like, imagine a very innovative company like Tesla. I
um,
mean, like Tesla clearly, they thought very deeply how to revolutionize the making of cars, and everyone told them, come on, you don't have, you have no clue about making cars, you're never going to succeed in this, it takes an established company to do it, and they proved everyone wrong. And now
uh-huh.
there may be other issues with Tesla, but that's not really my point. What I'm trying to say is Tesla said, we don't want the gasoline or diesel or like a fossil fuel car with an internal combustion engine. We don't want that. We want something that doesn't pollute the air. But they didn't say we're going to do away with stored energy in some shape or form in our car. They didn't say like we're not going to use batteries or fuel. We're just going to use algorithms and AI to solve this. Because everyone would tell them like, what are you talking about? This doesn't work. They they made incremental improvement. You could argue by moving from gasoline to batteries, and I mean, some people say it's not an improvement, some do, but again, that's a different story. They didn't say we don't need fuel or like we don't need energy. They just said we're going to improve the way the energy is stored, all things considered. And to me, the whole notion of algorithmic stablecoin or algorithmic stable token, it really resembles this idea of we're not going to need energy anymore. We're going to solve it with some algorithms or whatever. And that's where I feel like, I'm a derivatives guy by training. So there's a fine line between financial engineering and financial alchemy. And it's the one really,
And you saw what happened with the financial alchemy with like the whole alchemics project. Yeah, that's a good word to distinguish from.
because yeah, you can do a lot of things with cash flows and tokenomics and God knows what, but if people are ultimately not convinced that there's value in there and you're promising a stable token, you are going to run into problems. And I think any such algorithmic system, and admittedly, I think there's really some elegance to the way they set this up with the Luna and the UST. But this is a system that is locally stable. But the moment you knock it out of its local equilibrium, the thing is going to fall off a cliff. And then maybe you have to try to rescue it. But then, even if you rescue it, now you're still to your locally stable thing that can be knocked off again. So I just don't see this as being a great way of designing a stable token. You'd have to combine this with something, I don't know, with maybe Bitcoin collateral or something, but then immediately it also loses a lot of its flexibility and elegance.
Yeah, and I think that's a good word for this elegance. In a way, I don't think like the decentralized money sounds very cool. It hasn't really played out in reality that well, and you may think like, okay, now we're witnessing crypto people or like people even with good intentions, and I'm not bashing anyone here, just realizing why some design trade-offs have been made with monetary policy, right? Although
Mhm.
there's still like a bunch of corruption, a bunch of like bad practices in there, a lot of greed, of course.
I mean, I think generally that's how to design the mechanics of a DeFi platform. There's there's just so many trade-offs you have to make, and like on the one hand, you want to have things that really perform really well on a, like from a user experience point of view.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, you also have to take into account the complexity you add, like how much extra code do you generate, how much how intertwined is your platform going to be with other things. And the problem is the more complexity you add, the more interwoven everything is, the harder it'll be to predict what's going to happen in every case. Because all of a sudden you have this thing that nobody really understands. And DeFi is also, it's very good to automate systems. So you could have even more things that you may not even have foreseen from your own platform that other people kind of build on top. And this is something where, yeah, where you really have to be careful that you don't just add more and more and more complexity, that you then don't understand what's happening. And if you have times of real market distress, all of a sudden the thing behaves in weird ways. And then what do? Do you stop it or do you try to figure
and
out what's going on?
and when you were talking about interwoven things, you're very much right that, for example, if you go back to the original Bitcoin, no, sorry, Ethereum ICO, um, what did you purchase your Ethereum with? You purchased it with Bitcoin by sending Bitcoin to an address. Then after that, like, well, where did all the crypto ecosystem basically originate from? From like coins in Ethereum. And you go further down the line, and these tokens and the possibility of like tokenizing everything and bootstrapping any kind of project, and you see really how interwoven everything is. So it's no, I mean, it's no coincidence that whenever something in one area of crypto experiences a shake, then it ripples across the whole ecosystem. I don't know how the Tezos ecosystem is holding up through all this.
I mean, the TES token suffered quite a bit. Like it really got hammered as well. But overall, I guess partially because DeFi is still smaller on Tezos, the projects themselves were fine. I mean, our platform also had a few hiccups, but nothing catastrophic. I mean, it was fine. I mean, also it's
Uh-huh.
set up in quite a conservative manner, and yeah, we're quite happy with the fact that nothing really went catastrophically wrong. We see a number of things that we need to improve just in terms of stability, but yeah, we're happy that like even in these really stressful like market stress times, it all held up.
And how are you feeling about like the whole prospect of a bear market of, or like this cycle, or I don't know, where do you think we are in like the greater scale of things coming in
Oh,
the
I think
crypto
I mean
market?
but again, the next bear market is a question of when, not if. So
Uh-huh.
I think I mean maybe it's coming now, maybe it'll take another year or two, who knows, but it's it'll come. I mean, there's no doubt. Eventually it'll come back. I mean, even in the like normal equity markets, the crashes tend to be a bit more spread out. And crypto, everything is a bit more high speed
Hmm.
and a little more extreme. So I mean, eventually we're gonna have a crypto winter, I guess. But after the crypto winter, we had the DeFi summer. So I think the moment you're not just going for a short-term hype project, you just know like there's going to be ups and downs, and you just have to make sure you somehow survive the crypto winter, and then you're fine.
I mean, everyone swears that they're not a hype project, right? But then the winter, then the winter hits, and it's like, ooh, where's everyone?
What's it like when the tide goes back? You see who's swimming without underwear.
Right. And in reality, like a lot of people are swimming without underwear. I swear, like I, I mean, it sounds ugly to say like this, but like the bear markets weed out a lot of idiots, and that's what happens. You just like you're gonna see if we hit a bear market or if we see a prolonged decline in prices, you're going to start seeing less NFT projects, less a lot of people that invested in NFT projects and paid way more than they should. They're gonna go broke. That's what's going to happen, and it's already happening. You see a
Mm,
lot of people that are trying to cash out their NFTs and flipping them and everything, and they're not being able to. What was it? The guy that purchased the first tweet ever as an NFT, and he managed to sell it for like less than 1/10 of what he purchased it for. So yes, fun times. But in the end, like you gotta try and invest in things that will prevail and that have real utility.
I mean, I think there's definitely truth to that. Like the bear markets will weed out a lot of the junk, and that's always like that. But on the other hand, I also don't want to dismiss the bull markets too much. Of course, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of bullshit, but bull markets also they really allow for all sort of weird innovation to happen. And even if 90% is nonsense, 10% are going to be very interesting. And I think we've seen quite a bit like happening in DeFi that's going to be here to stay. I mean, for instance, like just the constant product market maker, and then the further evolvements from that, any kind of other constant function market maker, the Uniswap version 3. I think that's really something that I don't know whether I wasn't aware of it before, and I think this is some real innovation. And obviously, for any project in a bull market, it's just easier to find funding, whereas in a bear market, it'll be much harder. So it's not just the idiots that suffer in a bear market, like everyone suffers. But
Right.
I think for us, it's just, yeah, sooner or later there will be a bear market, and we just have to be ready for that.
And with a product like yours, that's very. I mean, it's geared towards more savvy people, right? Although I would say, well, it's something that in the traditional world is very geared towards, yeah, savvy people. But in DeFi, you sort of get the opportunity to package it more nicely and to make it more friendly and accessible. Um, do you expect like a different turnaround of people if we hit a bear market?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll change a bit, especially people who entered the crypto space very recently at very elevated levels. When levels go down even further, or when if they just stay here, there will be less uh, availability of just free cash that people see as funny money and invest in anything that looks interesting. Also, I
Mhm.
think people have a notoriously short memory, but once they get burned properly, it'll still take a while until they just willy nilly invest into the next project.
Right. Yeah. That's also true. Now, a lot of people do not realize that 80% on the way down is 400% on the way up, and those those numbers. I mean, crypto is explosive. I do notice this that in crypto, of course, like saving exceptions like Terra, for example, but like it's the way down is often slow and painful, and the
Mm.
way up it often happens very fast and pretty much seemingly out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's true. And also, I mean, all this space, obviously, it's still very new, it's very Wild West. So there's a lot of innovation happening, also a lot of nonsense happening. And like the flip side of the opportunity is the risk. Like if it was certain that something was going to work, the opportunity would probably be gone. So
Right.
whatever you do, you just have to hope that your specific niche you're going for is the right one, and that whatever you do is actually is valid and it works, and you're not going to be replaced by someone else. So I think this, yeah, it's a it's an interesting game, but yeah, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
And moving to somewhat happier fields, I'm learning. I'm just learning when I was researching for this episode and figuring out what were good topics to touch on. Uh, I just realized that the Tezos update finally is it finished finally? I think it is, right?
I think so, but I'm notoriously bad at these Tezos updates. Sorry, I once started going down the rabbit hole and I realized I spent so much time on it, so I don't really have time to do that.
All right, but like, I mean, with your very limited knowledge, it's definitely gonna be more than I know. So, anything you can say about that, or should
I
we
mean,
just
maybe just
like
as a
not
step
go there?
back, what always fascinated me about the Tezos blockchain was that it has these forkless upgrades.
Hmm.
It has like upgrades every 3 months now or something. Like it's just really regularly. That on the one hand creates some stress for the developers because they have to make sure everything is still running with the new update. But on the other hand, it really allows for a very fast pace of innovation so that, I mean, the problems that you now see with Ethereum's, like, is there going to be the thing or not? Like, are they going to move to the proof of stake and the, what's it, 2.0 or whatever? Like, is that going to happen or not? Like, it's just not a question. The thing is moving forward, and
Right.
they constantly work on improving the potential throughput of transaction per block. And yeah, I think in that sense, it's very impressive just how well this works.
I think, and in a place like crypto where everything's sort of like advances funeral to funeral, uh, you see. I mean, it's worth a lot that Tezos is standing the test of time rather well, and that every time it looks more solid, and people can take it more seriously. And whereas things like Terra, for example, they get a lot of hype and then they just died, and you just have to like deal with that. And a lot of stuff that started being similar or using Terra is no doubt like just having to hit the stop button and rethink everything from scratch.
Yeah, in that sense, I really think it's a very sound chain, Tezos, and I really like the way it's set up. But obviously, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, the whole space is still so young. So we obviously we bet on Tezos, but yeah, we going to see what happens. But I think of technology-wise, I think it's a very good product.
In the Yeah, in the previous bull market, I started looking more into Tesos, and I can say that there were some very cool projects like originating. We talked about them before, so we don't have to cover them again. But I just like want to know if there's anything else in the Tesos ecosystem that has caught your eye lately.
I mean, you did mention NFTs, and Tezos has been reasonably successful with NFTs in the last couple of
Hmm.
months, and there's been quite some stuff happening there. And I actually think NFTs have some clear use cases, and we're probably still going to figure out many more new use cases than we're kind of aware right now. But it's probably not going to be JPEGs. I mean, that's kind of a niche product as a collectible item of saying, yeah, I'm part of this of the cool club of this, and that's okay. But I think I wouldn't equate NFTs with JPEGs. So a lot of what you see just with like these, how you want to call it, like first generation NFTs, I find that rather a bit boring. So
Hmm.
they come up with a NFT game. What's it, Dogami? So it's like, to me, it looks a bit like a mix of Tamagotchi and others thing. Like you have like a dog as an NFT that you can buy, and then you need to take care of it. And so that I think is quite funny. Like I don't really have time for this, but uh, I like that it's moving beyond just a bloody NFT. Sorry, a bloody JPEG picture that you can put in your Twitter and Discord's profile picture.
Right. I mean, I'm not a fan of those NFTs. Have been a fan of like just like I've played with NFTs, especially on Teslas, because I really like the platform. I like the process of minting them, the process of like taking something, making it something quote unquote unique. I've used them briefly for property rights, which I think is like one thing that people haven't looked into it too much. Maybe
Mhm.
because the regulation isn't there yet.
I think that, I mean, the property rights, they're definitely an interesting bit. I think I saw this video on YouTube by this one lawyer guy that talked about NFTs and the use cases and property rights. And I think there's still some things that really need to be ironed out, because if I mint an NFT and I sell it to you, we kind of have a contractual agreement. But if you sell it to the third person, do they still, like, if there's any limitations within the use case of that NFT, or if there's other things, you need to pay something, some licensing or anything like that, it's not so clear how that now refers to that, like relates to that third party. Does that person also, are they also bound by our contractual agreement or not? So I
Mm.
thought that was actually interesting. And I think the trying to bridge that gap from like the real world to the blockchain world with many of these things, that will be a challenge for the years to come, because I'm not sure all these gaps can be bridged with reasonable effort, but where it can, it'll be very interesting, because then you unleash the power of like smart contracts on all these things, and that will be yeah, that will just create a lot of new business opportunities in my view.
Either that, or we'll just move to the metaverse, and finally we have to make money, so we all collectively accept the NFTs.
I mean, I think for say, for instance, real estate possession, given how you see how DeFi works at the moment, you probably want to wait a few more years before you have somebody's house on there, just in case something goes wrong. But once this technology is really tried and tested, this may be a use case. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that.
Actually, I briefly looked at another project, and we're looking whether we could collaborate. And they were looking to have collateralized lending, but with real world collateral, like having
Okay.
actual things in the real world that you use as collateral to then borrow money. And yeah, that's an interesting bit because it creates so many issues, but at the same time, you may tap into the liquidity of DeFi if you can solve it.
Right. And you want to, I mean, that's a main. Remember that, like in 2000 and I want to say 19, it was right before DeFi summer. There was this trend of like, oh, the new big thing is going to be tokenizing everything.
Hmm?
That was before people cared about NFTs, but like for a while, it looked like he was gonna go there. Like, oh, we're gonna tokenize gold, we're gonna tokenize diamonds, we're gonna
Hmm?
tokenize. It was also like a stable coin boom of sorts.
Hmm.
So I'm just wondering what ever happened to all of this tokenization.
I guess they're still a bit on the back burner at the moment, but it's
Yeah, like who knows? Maybe they run into too many legal troubles trying to do that, and they just decided it was not gonna be them who do it.
it
But
could be. I mean, I remember I was really very enthusiastic about it, but
yeah.
like you solve one problem and there's two more. Like this, you discover two more. It's it is compared to just accepting some kind of crypto token as collateral. If you want to have some real world asset, like yeah, it's very complex and like you run into all these things that you typically solve in the real world, and then at some point you also have to wonder what exactly is my benefit of bringing this to the blockchain.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. Go ahead, go ahead.
and I think, I mean, there's you can make certain cases, but then it really is also a function of like is your trade-off worthwhile with the benefits you're getting of maybe using this now as some other thing, and like easy tradability in theory. Is it worth the effort you have to put in to actually make this work?
Hmm.
And really, there's a lot of potential problems you run into. I mean, if I have a machine I now kind of use as collateral, I tokenize it and I borrow money against it, you want to make sure I'm not using it as collateral somewhere else, because it's, even though the token is unique, it's probably some kind of NFT. My machine is still my machine. I can go on Ethereum, do the same thing. So you have to have some contractual agreement now, and this is now you're leaving the trustless environment. Now you have to have something where the real world law applies, and where you have to enforce that.
I'm thinking whether whether there could be a possibility of like getting. I don't know. Isn't it funny that I'm just fantasizing here, obviously, but isn't it funny that like things have to be governed by the law? What if you had a house and decided, okay, this house is not governed by the law, so like you can just put it on chain because it doesn't matter. Um,
I
it's
mean, but
interesting. Like we don't think about these things, but like it's present over everything, and you cannot get outside of it.
yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, what I meant when I said you need enforceability of the law is if I tokenize my machine and I pledge it now, and you lend me whatever $100,000 just for this machine, you obviously want to make sure I'm not tokenizing it again and again and again and again. And
Right.
so you need some way to make sure or that you can trust me that this is going to be okay. I mean, maybe
True.
also you know where I live and you come visit me and
Which is what ultimately happens with the law, right? Like they say,
that's true.
like governments are monopolizing violence, and that's what happens
I mean, I guess
eventually.
that's why you see whenever, I mean, organized crime, as I see it, with all its negative effects, but it's business on the other side of the law, and they cannot use the law to enforce whatever contractual agreements they have, so they have to enforce it themselves.
Right. Yeah. Interesting point. I mean, with those and all that, you could theoretically there's just, for example, the clearance core to which you can plug into. But yeah, you're right. You don't really have enforceability on the blockchain, and that might be something that eventually we solve. But right now, I just do not see how you could solve that kind of thing.
I remember I talked with some banker guy a while back about doing uncollateralized loans on the blockchain. And I told them, I don't really see how this works because the moment you do an uncollateralized loan in the real world, you have to do a credit check on the person, you have to know where they live. You will only do it if they live in a jurisdiction that you're comfortable with, where you have some reach. And
Hmm.
ideally, you really want to know the person and kind of now deduct that, yeah, they're probably not going to default on the loan. So if you do uncollateralized loan with willy-nilly, like random people, it becomes a bit more complicated. And then you could do that with a guarantor. That's kind of what we came up with. If you have a guarantor that has all these abilities, that knows where the person is, and they have cheap capital, and they can post the capital, like the collateral for you, and they make a cut in between, that could maybe work, but I'm not sure it's going to be interesting as a business in the end.
And in the end, it's still collateralized loan. It's just not collateralized by you.
Yeah, because if you do it without, then you're fully dependent on the law, and at some point you have to wonder what exactly is the advantage of the blockchain.
Yes, and there was also a project to like do uncollateralized loans, and I think it was based on on-chain activity and proof of funds and all that. But your whole business model collapses once people just start not paying
Yeah,
it.
this is getting close to the financial alchemy again.
Yeah,
This is like
just
always
in
like,
the same
we use
direction.
AI and we find out, like magic happens and a millennia old problem is solved like this. And yeah, I don't believe it.
And actually, like doing a non-collateralized loan is pretty much like the opposite of what blockchains should be for, right? They should be there to like verify and to only rely on code and not on
Yeah,
humans.
I mean, it's
And
trustless, and uncollateralized loan depends on trust
mhm.
and maybe a reputation, but really it comes down to the same.
And as we've said, as we've seen through the week, like reputations erode very quickly and are very much contextual, even if you don't think so. Man, moving outside of all of this for a second, yeah, I mean, I haven't asked you yet. What's new with you, US, as you pronounce it, ever since we started doing ever since we did our last chat?
When did we have our last chat? Actually,
Uh,
was it last year?
it was in December because I discovered I have COVID 2 days 2 days after, and ruined Christmas for the whole family
Oh no!
basically. Yeah,
So
fun
yeah,
times.
new things that happened was that in January we added a decentralized exchange, like a swap feature on the US platform with flat curve. So it was in a way similar to what you see on Curve, but it's like Arthur Breitman, the main guy from Tezos, like the founder.
Hmm.
He designed this slightly different flat curve that's even flatter than the one you see on Curve, and we implemented this so that you can trade the US dollars against the wrapped USDC and some other stable tokens. And we also have the Bitcoin tracker, the UBTC. You can trade against TCBTC, this centrally wrapped Bitcoin on the Tezos blockchain. So that was one thing. We also added farms on our own platform for these tokens. And now, with having more and more tokens, and we with the governance token, the U that we have, you can
Hmm.
collect platform profits. So far, you collect platform profits in one of several staking pools. So you either collect US dollars or you collect UDFI or UBTC. And we thought it's not very elegant, and also we want to kind of create a bit more natural demand for the U token. So we're currently in the testing phase of a unified staking pool where the platform will collect the earnings in these various tokens and then trade them on a DEX versus the governance token, the U. And then you get U, and you basically also have a compounding feature. You no longer have to go whatever every day, every week, collect your savings and then do whatever you do with it. But you're already getting U tokens, and then that will be kind of counted as your stake, and you have this compounding feature.
I really like this idea of redistributing platform profits to users. Um, Actually, I've been looking into a similar project, a project that's on lending and that does that kind of thing. Um, well, that want to do, they haven't launched yet. But like, I'm surprised more projects, especially those that are governed by DAOs, such as like Aave and Compound. I'm surprised they haven't implemented this kind of model. What do you think that is? What do you think like it's so rare that someone comes up with the idea of like redistributing to
I
holders?
mean, for us, it was definitely an idea to be future compliant. We really think that in the next 3 to 5 years, there will be some quite significant regulation in the DeFi space. And if you pretending to be a DAO project, but in the end, you're really just a fintech, at some point, you just become an unregulated fintech.
Hmm.
So in our view, you can't be too centralized and still claim to be a DAO DeFi project. It just doesn't work. And
Right.
we wanted to make sure that when this regulation comes, that we're not running afoul of it, and that they will not come tell us like, guys, you've been basically running an unregulated DeFi like fintech project for all these years. You're in big trouble now.
How do you think? How do you think that regulation might look like in 3 to 5 years? And roughly, it doesn't have to be like very precise, but
I mean, I think at some point we're definitely going to have KYC AML.
mm,
Nobody's keen on that, but I think there will probably be like this bifurcation in the market. You're going to have those projects that have KYC and those that kind of go digital underground and don't do it.
don't you think it could kill a lot of DeFi as we know it if everything suddenly started requiring KYC AML?
Yes, probably could. I mean, I will also, I think those projects that have been truly reckless, they will probably be in trouble. We're also going to be worse for the weeks to come. But yeah, I think as tragic as it is, and I really don't want anyone to lose money, I think it may still be good overall for the space in the medium to long term.
Yes, I feel the same way, man. And don't you? I mean, I'm not scared of a bear market. I might be scared that the bear market never ends, but like, but in reality, when you look at like the global macroeconomic situation, the demand of Bitcoin, how the economies are increasingly turning to it, I mean, it seems crazy to think. It would have seemed crazy to think, even with a proper war happening, that 4 years ago, like a country was gonna be soliciting donations in crypto, like
Yeah.
Ukraine did. I mean, you just see like it, people turning to it in the right times, and I think that will continue to happen. In the meantime, I don't know, man. For me, it's always a good time to like buy a bit more of the stuff that I think is going to be useful in 5 years. What do you personally? And this is not financial advice. This is just two guys talking. But like, what do you hold? What do you buy? What things are you personally excited about?
I mean, obviously for me, mainly, I'm invested in my own platform, especially with
Of course.
time and effort. I hold some tests, I hold some Bitcoin, some ETH. I hold a few other tokens, but actually I don't really have time to delve deeply into other projects. And that's also, I remember everyone now saw the thing with Terra coming from ages ago. I just didn't really look deeply enough into it. I remembered like this looks kind of interesting. I wonder where the value actually comes from besides that little taking out the slack. And I thought surely there's some collateral somewhere. And then I never really bothered to look into it more in detail. So I don't really have the time. And I just sometimes when I see very interesting innovations in other projects, then I try to look how it works and see whether it's applicable to us. But yeah, it's pretty boring. It's that some our own tokens, TES, Bitcoin, some ETH.
I mean, I'm on the constant look and analysis of projects, but like I also find myself flocking mostly towards ETH. I mean, in my mind, it's the gasoline of the future. It's the gasoline that powers the decentralized cars. So it's always. I mean, in my mind, it's always solid. Um, and you can say like going back to the Terra thing, you can say, you can clearly see that it's a lot of bullshit, that everyone knew that it was like gonna blow up or that it was weak. I mean, you can see exactly where people priced this project, and it was like top five of the crypto market, top two chains by TVL. So like, yeah, you can people can say that they saw it coming, but they didn't see it coming.
Yeah,
Like they priced it super high.
I mean, of course, some people did see it coming, but I'm just my problem is that not everyone that claims now they did see it coming.
Yeah, no, no one.
I mean,
They,
some
they
people,
didn't.
somebody may make these public warnings, and good for them, and I think it's good. But now everyone's like, yes, always knew it.
Mhm. And you can see. I mean, if people really want to prove that they always saw it coming, they can cite back their old tweets, which like, of course, everyone that did see it coming is now bragging about it, like citing their
Exactly,
old
that
tweets.
makes sense. But you can also, if you selectively delete your tweets, your track
Mhm.
record looks much better.
Man, it's just incredible. I think I bought like 1 million Luna for like $10 or something like that. I'm just like, I'm thinking it can become like the new meme coin. Like it's just like people pumping it and dumping it for the fun of it. Who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe there's something there.
I remember when the whole thing started failing, and there were all these people who were really defiant and saying, "No, no, no, this is the future, and like it's gonna hold, and we're gonna rescue this." It reminded me of this little scene in the Cameron movie Titanic. You
Hmm.
know, when they realize, okay, they hit the iceberg, and the thing is like whatever 5 sections are hit, and the thing is going to sink, and that there's this skeptic guy who's like, what do you mean this ship cannot sink? And then there's the engineer guy who says like, she's made of iron, she can and she will. And I thought
Or
like
it's
it kind of
alphabetically
really
pegged. It can and it will.
I thought like this. Yeah, really had some similarities in that. Yeah, just because it has the hype was that it's not possible doesn't mean it's really the case.
Right. I think I mean, lots of lessons to learn for everybody. Lots of, I mean, it really shows you how weak and how new the ecosystem is. I don't know, man. Like, it's been how long since Bitcoin got invented? 10? No, so something like 15 years, maybe.
12 years, or was it 13? I don't know.
13, something like that. This whole thing is super young and it's so weak right now. It could almost be like, and I think about this a lot actually. It could always be like we were all wrong about it all in the whole time, and we are all proven wrong, and no one remembers crypto in 50 years. But
Could be.
we're hoping it's not the case. I think like, yeah, a lot of these things are going to be gone and forgotten pretty soon, so you might as well try and make a 10-year bet, make a 5-year bet, make a 50 years bet, and see what stands up. Man,
Exactly.
anything else you want to tell your community looking at this, so that we don't end in such a grim tone, or anything you'd like to tell anyone that didn't know about Tezos?
I mean, generally, I think the whole DeFi space, it's even with everything that happened, it's still a very exciting space, a lot of innovation happening. And yeah, be careful what you invest in, be careful what you touch. I think it's really important that people educate themselves and that they understand how these things work. Like, don't just invest in something that just looks great. I mean, otherwise, you're just betting on getting out in time, which maybe happen, maybe not. You just don't. What's it like with was it Warren Buffett who said like in a poker game, if you cannot tell who is the fool, it's probably you. So don't be the fool. Like just I really think there is interesting stuff happening, but you should be able to understand what's going on. If you don't understand what's going on, where all this yield is coming from, that's already a bit of a red flag.
That's a good way to think about it. If you're not betting to stay, you're betting to get out on time, and not everyone can run fast enough.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for doing this, man. A pleasure talking to you.
Thanks. Yeah, this is always fun. I really enjoyed being on
Yeah,
your show.
always welcome to come back. Like, it's great to talk to people for a second time. You're a great guy. We'll be talking in here for sure. So if you watch these all the way up to here, please subscribe. Please leave a comment and be on the lookout for part 3. We'll be back pretty soon.
Sure.
Bye bye,
Thank
everyone.
you very much. Bye bye.